Crypto market is again at an interesting turn. Coinbase is being warned by the SEC about the securities charges, which seems a little bit odd since they were actually working with the SEC and still they are hammered. And on the other side of this, the market does show us some interesting facts if we are trying to learn from it. Yes, XRP went up. It blew towards 0.5 all the way from 0.37, and now we came back and touched 0.4. Now we are literally trying to bounce off from the support, and we need to understand what the hell is the price structure showing us. We talked about this possibility, and look at the RSI here. We actually highlighted when the RSI reach here, you get rejected, right? We knew that. You go up, and then what happens? You come back down to the moving average. You slow down there. That's the yellow box which we have highlighted. And then you consolidate and then bounce. You go up. So understanding the macro is so important. Now that's about XRP. But if you look at Bitcoin and the market structure, we were having this thought process of like, okay, this is the support. We are still in that pattern. And we were slowly trying to look at the market a bit positively. And then the Fed came in and hammered the market. But we did share the thought process yesterday saying, okay, the Bitcoin dominance is showing us something like this, which usually pushes the market lower. And when we try to learn zooming into the market was showing us interesting facts, right? And we presented it in a way like just 2 days back, the market was slowly showing us that bulls are getting exhausted, right? We pushed that out here. Bulls are getting exhausted. I posted that on the Patreon with all these other information, right? And here on this one, just 2 days back, we were talking about a possible break to the downside if that happens. But the interesting fact is that the price actually went up and touched this level of resistance. And I was thinking like, okay, this bearish pattern may actually break bullish. But then the Fed came out with that breaks and pushed the price lower. Welcome to the Scientific Investor family, where the normal retail guys learn how to become the next top 10% in crypto. Right now, when we are looking at everything, the confusion is like, okay, what changed with this? And potentially this enforcement action coming. Because the market just dropped when we are zooming in on it and saying like, yeah, the market actually dropped suddenly. We are below the moving average. Yes, I agree. But there is a possibility which we should not be missing, that we had a similar pattern, a price structure, which showed us we break higher, we test the moving average, and then we bounce again. We do this drop, then what? You consolidate and continue higher. So that should not be missed while we look at the market in a panic mode. Because the panic mode is what causes us to take wrong decisions. So here we are looking at the market, right? Yes, this is true. We understand this fact. But then when you actually go on to the price structure, you look at this with clarity. You try to be more of an investor looking at what the market is showing you. So yes, we broke this level clearly to the upside, which was a great sign. Now, if we consolidate here and bounce back up, that is still a bullish sign. And remember, for XRP, things have not changed yet. You're here, and that's bullish. If you are looking at all this information which the market is giving us, yeah, we got a long wick to the downside, we went to the upside, and look at the RSI. You had a trend line in which at first it was a support, then it became a resistance, and the retest of that after the rejection, right here, was the break above the moving average, and you got rejected. Now you look at this, you break the moving average here, you're coming back to test the moving trend line here, and that's a rising trend line. And the interesting fact which I'm looking at is like you have this touch here, right? When you're breaking to the downside, after that you get 1, 2, 3 and you get rejected. Then you went back up, boom. So right now you broke this to the downside, you got 1, 2, and the third touch is where we got rejected in the RSI. So it kind of shows us like, okay, there is something happening in the market which is a lot in similarity with the history. We got a double bottom which was actually in a scale with the 2020 March, the health crisis, the pandemic, all those stuff. But here it was comparatively smaller, which is actually a positive sign. But what we really would like to see in XRP right now is what the price does with the weekly candle, right? Yes, looking at everything, it's actually really great because usually RSI gives you information before the price does. So RSI is showing you we are breaking higher, we are still looking to the upside. The volume here on the weekly is still green. It is bullish. It has not gone bearish because just with a drop in the market, people go negative. And at that time, remember, this is where we are. We got the daily candle which was pushing all the way up, and now here we are at this level which has been a support. So once you break a level like this, if you are looking at the charts, you're a technical guy, then you would say, okay, most likely that's going to be the next level of support. Why? You try to go in time and see like, okay, that has been a level of resistance is support, and the price was respecting this particular level. So 0.4 is kind of a psychological level. I don't know why, but it is acting as one right now. And when we are breaking higher from such a pattern, it is interesting for us to say, okay, there is still a possibility we may run up a 40%. And that comes all the way up to 0.6. And yes, we do have key resistance level just below that. So the price may actually slow down. If not, we are literally watching higher odds of higher level of bullishness coming into the market, because on a weekly, we actually understood the RSI is breaking higher. Great. Now we zoom in, we come here on a daily. We really want to see like, okay, fine, we are getting that volatility, but on a daily, what the hell are we doing, right? And here we are actually seeing like, okay, we went above that, but we got rejected. So that's the story which the daily chart is giving us. Now, are we actually coming all the way back down? Right now, we don't know. We are still inside the pattern. But as we take our step back onto a monthly, we see like it's actually reversing, right? It's not actually that bearish where a lot of people are looking at lower lows right now. Because I've been looking at the market. Some of you guys have sent me different posts from different individuals. Everyone have different opinions, thought process and all. But what matters the most is what the price action suggests, right? If we actually go back and look at this, say the thought process here is like we had higher amount of buying volume, but they were not able to push the price up here, right? So buyers were getting exhausted, or in the other words, sellers were getting stronger, right? And with lower selling volume, it had even higher candles. So that kind of made sense, right? And right now, what we have to do is we are going into the market, looking at what's happening, right? Here we had a month which showed you a lot of bearishness compared to this one. Fine. But look at the volume here. You had similar volume to that of this, but the sellers were not able to push the price lower like this last time. So there is a twist, meaning sellers are getting slowed down or exhausted. And then followed by that, we are actually getting bullish volume, which actually suggests like, okay, more and more buyers are coming in, because while we are looking at this level, we are like, okay, let's see how things are evolving. MACD is trying to get closer, which is a good story. So on the monthly, we are still waiting to see whether the price break through the 50-day moving average. But usually, if we are optimistic, like we are all, we will look at the 21-day moving average, say on a weekly, on a monthly. It kind of gives us an even more better picture to see where we are headed, right? We actually went up here, got rejected before the crash. So that's the bear market. So as we are starting, I would say like, okay, that measured move which we just got in the short-term horizon, the macro shows us that it is a resistance where we may come and test. That is actually a good thing. Now, you take a step in, that's still a weekly chart, it's still long-term view where we are looking at this and saying like, okay, we just had a massive breakout from this pattern. We are still holding on to that, and the week has not ended yet. So if you are here in the market and you're asking the question like, okay, where are we going from here? First thing, we're waiting for the weekly close. But before that, let me say this thing. In my opinion, the RSI suggests that we are breaking higher and we are starting a new trend. So we just dive in and we are looking at this level and literally we are saying like, okay, we broke higher. We are trying to retest this level. Even if we come back down on a zoomed in view, even if we come back down to 0.39, that still is a great thing, because look at the level of volume which came in after this green day, right? So you need to look at the size of the green movement with that amount of volume and then compare it with this. So you literally got like 80-85% of same volume which is in red. Still, the price did not come down here to 80-85% of that move, which for me shows like, okay, the sellers did try to push the price down, but the market is saying like, I'm becoming optimistic. And why is that? This is one of the things which I strongly believe that these guys are right. Maybe I'm optimistic, maybe I'm biased because XRP is my biggest holding, maybe. But look at the fact, right? I think this is now becoming more and more obvious. So for me, I would completely agree with Credible Crypto on this one. And I'm like, the guy has been sharing a lot of different thought process, which is great. Now, read this. People are so obvious to Ripple and XRP that they forget Ripple has been fighting this for nearly 2 years. And the outcome of this case will likely be a big deal for the entire crypto market in the US, right? And the key part here is this, and that is a reality, right? Even before Coinbase can actually make an opening argument, most likely we get the clarity on the other side. If that is like this, now these are not the guys who were completely bullish on XRP from last 10 years. They are looking at in their entire market and they are looking at the technology, agreed. But the idea here is he's not mentioning Bitcoin. He's talking about the certainty in US. So the investors, the brain power, everyone would be looking at this and saying like, if I need to invest more money in, as the rates go down, maybe by the end of this year, early next year. Now, some of these big institutions are pricing in mid this year. And I'm like, if that has to happen with what just the Fed gave us today, that means they would actually say like, majority of the banking has to collapse before we pivot. And I'm like, okay, so you are actually willing to do that despite the fact that millions of citizens are going to get hurt. But they don't care, right? They are the elites. So we go back here and we look at this thought process and try to understand, okay, if that's happening, the market will show you that. Remember this. If the market is showing us that it broke higher with that amount of volume, which we saw way back here, what changed in the 6-7 months? It's the thought process about the case, the argument, right? That these guys may most likely win. With the recent case from the Voyager, we got the information which is reinforcing the Ripple's argument of fair defense, which kind of gives you the clear thought process. Okay, something is changing. And this can be great for XRP and a lot can be bad for Ether-based tokens. And I'm like, some of the projects which I like, they are ERC20. And I'm like, what would be their future, right? Will they move on to AVAX? Will they move on to any other different projects? And I'm like, okay, still, there is an issue. Staking, right? And if you're looking at the proof of stake mechanism, it's built into the architecture. And it's the coding, right? And I'm like, SEC, they're nuts. I mean, how can you literally say the code is changing, so this is a security? Meaning, the rewards you get is not by the Coinbase. It's by these protocols, right? If you're staking on Ether, it's Ether, the network, which is giving you that, not Coinbase. It's just a third-party organization which is actually conducting those for you, right? They're collecting it and giving it to you. And that's happening directly via your wallets. So it's your wallet. If you have your keys, that's yours. we have regulators who are so old who can't understand the technology, or they don't even think about next 20 to 30 years because they don't care about the youth of this country, basically. So if you have youngsters there, they'll try to learn. Look at, I think, the El Salvador, he's young and he's looking for next 20, 30 years of his career, taking the right decision now. So in 5 to 10 years, they come up on top. Whereas the old guys on the other end, they're screwing up because they know in 20, 30 years they won't be here. So the actions which they take now, if that's rewarding in 20, 30 years, they don't care. So the reality has to come in. The people have to understand when they are electing leaders, they need to think about their children. They need to think about next 10, 20, 30 years. If not, we are going to deal with stuff like this and the country will be slow or closed out for the adoption. Why? If this is happening, imagine how much of the investors, all the cryptographers, any of the interesting projects which they think is going to be viable for next 10 years, they're moving out because they don't just want to get hammered by SEC in this particular country. I mean, they will be thinking, right now with all this happening, let's move out. And as Brad Garlinghouse highlighted last time, a lot of these institutions are already moving out. And that's the point where I'm like, okay, Ripple, with the biggest war chest in the crypto, has been fighting these idiots for a long time. And if the ruling goes with the fair defense, they can't even see these guys for selling because they've been doing that for a very long time and the SEC was, right? So that's a point I think is going to liberate XRP and still put entire crypto market in the US, not in the other part of the world, in the US, in uncertainty. Investors don't like uncertainty. So if you are here as an investor trying to learn from the market, keep this in mind. If you see XRP bursting through in next 5 to 10 days, putting these levels aside and making new highs, something is happening, or at least the big investors, they think like this. At least the big investors are understanding like, okay, we may need a hedge against these stuff happening in the country. And these guys have been fighting for so long, and right now, the law, the fact, everything is with them. So most likely, they may come out of the court as a winning client. And I'm like, that's great. We've been in this asset trying, researching, learning for a long period of time. So yes, don't forget, we use these tools to understand what's happening, right? If we are dropping, what are the possibilities, right? We actually came down close to, 26,600, and I'm like, okay, that's still a good drop. The measured move is like 6 to 6.8%, all the way up to 8.4%. So right now, if we are going to look at Bitcoin and ask like, okay, we dropped, but how low did we actually move? That's like close to 8%. And I'm like, the measured move here is close to 8%, 8.4. Is that it? Are we going to get another big leg down? Because the level is here and we broke from a higher level right now, right? So if we actually try and plot that to see like, okay, if that's true and we broke the market from here, retested and got rejected, then the 8% we took from there is already almost near. And even if we are dropping a little bit, that's close to 26,000. And that's what we've been discussing from all this time, right? We may actually come back down to this measured move, which is close to 26,000, 25,000 range. And that is going to be the key for everyone in this market. We've been talking about these possibilities all the way, right? Say 3 days back when we were slowly bouncing back, we were saying, okay, we go down, test that and pump. That is a good thing because if you're a short-term guy working on an hourly chart, that's a hard part, I agree. But if you're looking at the macro, wow, it does look optimistic unless you are only in the ERC20 tokens. If you're in utility assets, that's great. So guys, if you received value for your time and received new value information, please do hit that like and subscribe button if you haven't done that already. I'll meet you guys on the next video. Bye for now.